Um, it's my privilege to be here to talk to everybody who is opposed to the death penalty. I know that y'all have been involved for quite some time uh, in trying to change an unfair system, and I appreciate all of your efforts. I am a latecomer to this cause. I was in support of and prosecuted and tried death penalty cases and resolved death penalty cases both at trial and on appeal. And back then, I believed that what so many of the people here today currently believe, which is that if somebody has a fair trial and a fair appeal, that then the system can identify the worst of the worst. And that's how the death penalty is sold as a system to people in the world. The problem is that that is just false. It just isn't happening. And I really didn't realize that wasn't happening until I got to the Court of Criminal Appeals, where I was having to decide these issues either on direct appeal or on a habeas writ that came post conviction, or literally within hours of an execution. That's when we were deciding these cases at the Court of Criminal Appeals. And the problem is that the system that had been sold to me as a young prosecutor that I believed was a system that worked, in reality is not the system that exists, or at least too often it doesn't exist. And so that led me to believe what I believe today, which is that the death penalty is truly just random. It's random as to who gets it and who doesn't get it, and why that person gets it and why that person doesn't get it. And if a system is random, it is unjust. It should not exist. And to best explain why I think it's random, I think in my head, I do what I would do as a lawyer on direct exam in a trial. Lawyers are told to ask who, what, when, where, why. Those are the questions you want to ask in a direct exam. So when I look at the death penalty, those are the questions I'm going to ask. So who are we talking about? Primarily, we're talking about poor people, people of color, and cases where the victim is Anglo. Those are the people who are going to get on death row. If the person has money, not going to end up on death row. If the victim is a minority, possibly you're going to end up on death row, but more likely if the victim is Anglo. So the who part of this is highly problematic. The what are we talking about? Well, primarily we're talking about the intentional death, not primarily, that is what we're talking about, the intentional death of a human being. That's what we're talking about. It is taking a live human being and killing that human being. And people want to sanitize all of this and just say, well, it's lethal injection or it's the death penalty. But what it is taking a live human being and causing their death. That's called homicide. And that is not clean or pretty, and it can't be cleansed into this sterile term of the death penalty. When is another question. Well, primarily the 200 people or so who were on death row are people who got there in the 1990s, 2000, 2010s. If those cases were looked at today in 2020, probably 95% of them would not end up on death row. We are not seeking the death penalty. We, meaning the government, is not seeking the death penalty today when it did seek the death penalty in those earlier decades. That's not a just system if somebody's going to be executed today for something that would not be, that they would not be executed for in the 2020s. And frankly, that's what hit me the most when I was on the Court of Criminal Appeals. I was reviewing cases and I would tell myself, if this happened today, there's no way this person would be on death row. And yet me as a judge, I'm being asked to bless off on this execution when I know that this person would not be executed for this crime or this situation in 2020. So there's a real disconnect between the people who got there early on and the people who are getting the death penalty in 2020. There's no real logical way to reconcile what's going on in terms of the past and the present. Where is another question. Well, if you commit your crime in certain counties, then you're likely to get the death penalty, like in Smith County. Well, they're going to seek death penalty on there on the most ridiculous offenses, and they're going to strike minorities and not let them on the jury. If you're in Smith County, you're going to have problems. But if you're in another county like Bexar County or Dallas County today, or Harris County even, most likely in Harris County today, they're not going to seek the death penalty. So where the offense occurs is going to decide this, which I think is a random way of doing a death penalty. And then why? Why are we doing this? Statistics and evidence continually shows there is no correlation between the safety of the public and the death penalty. So when you look at why are we doing this, it's revenge, pure and simple. It is simply, we don't like what you did, so we're going to cause revenge on you. And that is not justice in my mind. Justice should not be based on retribution or on revenge. It should be based on punishment, which can be done with a life sentence or life without parole. So when I looked at this after decades of being involved in the criminal justice system, and I tried to reconcile what I was doing on the Court of Criminal Appeals with what I thought was legally and morally correct, I couldn't reconcile those things. And so that is why I have now become so vocal about being against the death penalty. So thank you for including me today. I appreciate it. I think this is fantastic that kids are involved like this, and putting on a webinar like this. I'm so impressed by y'all. I don't think I could have done this or even dreamt of it when I was your age. And so I'm proud of the kids for doing this. And I'm proud of all the activists for being so vocal and so strong. I know it must be exceedingly difficult, but keep doing what you're doing. I really believe it's working. I really believe your voice is being heard. And I believe that we're going to see the death penalty, the end of the death penalty, in my lifetime. I really do believe that. But I join Yancy in saying the first thing you can do in the next 20 days is vote, and take every single person you know to vote and make sure they vote for those judges, because the judges are the ones who can change the system today. Today, the judges could vote in Texas that it's an unconstitutional system because of its randomness, but that's not going to happen as long as we have the current judges in power. And so you're going to have to vote if you want to see any changes to the system. But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Elsa.